Welcome, everyone. Hare Krishna. Can you hear me?
Yes, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Good to see you.
Same, Prabhu.
Tonight we will continue the Bhakti Shastri course. So far we've finished Sri Upanishad and Nectar of Instruction. Tonight we will begin the Nectar of Devotion, which is this book, which is one of the most important books in our tradition, in the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, in the Hare Krishna movement. It may be even the most important book. The book, Srila Prabhupada said that his books will be the law books for the next 10,000 years. And he also said that this book is the law book for ISKCON, for the Hare Krishna movement. So basically everything we do in the Hare Krishna movement in terms of our spiritual practices and our philosophy is coming from this book, the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, or the Nectar of Devotion. So when Prabhupada first published the book, it may have been 1972, I think, Krishna book was already out. So the Krishna book is a summary study of the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And the Nectar of Devotion is a summary study of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. One of Prabhupada's disciples wrote to him, and they said that just like the Krishna book is non-different from Krishna, we feel that this book is non-different from Srimati Radharani. And Srila Prabhupada appreciated that original sentiment of one of his disciples. So it teaches us how to practice devotional service, the science. So the subtitle of the book is The Complete Science of Bhakti Yoga. Bhakti Yoga being the process of devotion to Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is our tradition. And it is the complete science of Bhakti Yoga. So it's the step-by-step science of how to render service to Krishna. In the previous book, we heard about the beginning of spiritual life in the Nectar of Instruction to the higher stages of spiritual life. And the Nectar of Devotion will give details of how to practice in such a way that we can go from that beginning stage to the higher stage of spiritual life. So in this course, we're only going to cover the first 150 pages or so of the Nectar of Devotion. This is what we call the eastern side of the ocean. The book is divided into 4 sections, the east, the south, the west, and the north, which means each one is compared to be like the side of the ocean. So the first part that we're going to study, we're not going to study the last 3 parts. The first part we study is called the eastern side of the ocean. So it's to deal with Samanya Bhakti, which we'll explain next in a couple of weeks. We'll begin to explain Samanya Bhakti. Samanya Bhakti means general information about the process of bhakti or devotion to God, devotion to Krishna. And then Sadhana Bhakti is explained, which has 2 divisions, Vaidhi and Raganuga Sadhana. And then Bhava Bhakti is explained, and then Prema Bhakti is explained. So that's the first side of the ocean. Then the southern side, the western side, and the northern side go into deeper details about our actual relationship with Krishna once you've attained Prema Bhakti. So it's a much deeper subject matter. But we may cover that in the future somewhere. Bhakti Chaitanya Swami taught the southern side, which is the next section. That's the only course that I've seen in ISKCON where that section is taught and studied. Okay, so tonight we're going through the preface. Now, the preface and the introduction are not actually part of the course, so you won't be examined, but they're extremely important to set the tone of the book, because we need to understand what the book is actually about. So that's why we'll study the preface, and next week we'll study the introduction, just so we understand their relevance in terms of the entire book. So it'll give a good foundation for the study of the book. And there's a lot in the preface and the introduction. So they really need to be, if even last time I taught this was 20 years ago, but I'm not sure if we did the preface and the introduction. We might have. But even if you go straight into the book, I always say to the students, you really need to read these two, because there's a lot of information which gives the foundation of the book. Yeah, and the context. Yeah. Of the book. So tonight we'll start with the preface of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the Nectar of Devotion. So in the first paragraph, Prabhupada says, the Nectar of Devotion is a summary study of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which was written in Sanskrit by Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada, who is the chief of the 6 Goswamis, the direct disciples of Lord Chaitanya. So the last book that we studied, which was the Nectar of Instruction, was also authored by Rupa Goswami. So he is the leader. That's why we're known as Rupanuga Vaishnavas, which we covered in our previous discussion in the last book. So this particular book, Prabhupada actually says it's been written for practitioners. It's for people who are dedicated to practicing the path of Bhakti Yoga. To walk in on the first class on this it's a little high. Yeah, I mean, it could be a lot higher. It could be a lot higher. You'll pick up parts of it. Parts of it will make sense. But in terms of, it's not, Prabhupada says it's for practitioners of the science of Bhakti. So Manjuali, welcome. Good to see you. So it is for practitioners, people who are practicing the path of Bhakti Yoga. And as Prabhupada said, it's the guidebook or the law book for everything we do in our practices. So it comes from Rupa Goswami, who was taught personally for 10 days straight. And he also associated a great deal with Lord Chaitanya in Jagannath Puri also. So, he received a lot of instruction and a lot of association with Lord Chaitanya. So it's coming from his association with Lord Chaitanya. That's how he's presenting this book. So, when Lord Chaitanya first met them, Rupa and Sanatana Goswami, who are brothers, and the leaders of the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, they were known as Dabya Kas and Sakir Malik. So, historically speaking, the Mughals or the Muslims had invaded India, and they were ruling India 500 years ago. And they actually came to Rupa and Sanatana Goswami, who were Hindus or Vaishnavas. They came to them and they said, if you do not work for us, because they were extremely competent personalities, if you do not work for us, we will kill all of the Brahmanas, all of the holy people. So they were forced to work for. So they became, one was the Prime Minister of Bengal and the other one was the Treasurer of the government. So they were working for Nawab Hussain Shah. He's very powerful. He's a historical person. You can read about it. It's only 500 years ago. He was ruling Bengal. And in our history, he attacked Orissa. And Prataparudra Maharaj, who's in the pages of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, he had to fight him off. They had to fight, it's battles. 500 years ago, he had to take his army. He actually attacked him. He attacked Orissa while Prataparudra Maharaj was already fighting. And he attacked from the north. And when Prataparudra Maharaj heard it, he took part of the army up to the north. He said to the rest of the army, he said, stay here, take care of these guys, and we'll go up north and take care of the Nawab, which they did. And he defended both ways. Yeah, to put it in context, historically, 500 years ago, our movement, we're in a very easy part of history at this point in time, comparatively. You know, I mean, India was imagine, trying to start the Hare Krishna movement. You know, when India's being, it's under the rule of Muslims, and they weren't necessarily always very kind. You know, they would, they would beat people and kill people, and it was a dangerous time. So, Rupa and Sanatan, they moved to a place called Ramkeli, which is in northern Bengal, above Mayapur. And they were running the government from there. But while they were there, they were with a group of Brahmanas, and each day they were studying Srimad Bhagavatam, the holy books. And they developed a Gupta Vrindavan, a hidden Vrindavan, and they had replicas of Radhakund and Shamakund and like that, and they were absorbing themselves. And they would just send messages, via their servants. They'd say, go down to Calcutta or go here or go there and do this, rule the government. They didn't want to directly so much get involved. But then Nawab heard that they were getting absorbed in Vedic philosophy. So he personally came up there to see what they were doing. And he actually threw Sanatana Goswami in jail. And you can actually go to the jail. It's actually shaped like a dome. So it looks like a dome. And they lock you in there. He escaped eventually. And Rupa Goswami, he escaped and went to Vrindavan at that time. He moved across like that and waited for Sanatan to come. So that's why it says in the preface, it describes that they were known as Dabir Kas and Sakir Malik, because they were forced to work for the Muslims at that time. Prabhupada says, it is the grace of Lord Chaitanya that he accepted these two exalted personalities as his disciples and raised them to the position of Goswamis, the highest position of Brahminical culture. So if you read in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Lord Chaitanya attempted to go to Vrindavan 2 or 3 times. On one of the times, he went to Ramkeli, which is the place where they were living, and he met with them. And then when he met with them, he initiated them. And in our tradition, you actually don't need jagya or fire sacrifice. You can just give someone the beads and give them their name. And the guru, in our tradition, when we do the jagya, to make it, samskar, to make it formal and to make you feel like it's important. But actually, in the case of Lord Chaitanya just initiated on the spot.
It's just like giving the mantra, isn't it? Because it's called a Harinam initiation, the first one. So
the first one's only come into existence recently. Yeah, previously Diksha was both at once. Yeah. Gayatri. Yeah. There was only one, it's called Diksha, it was just one initiation. But then it was in more recent times, Prabhupada's guru and Prabhupada, they broke it into 2 to make it, they had their reasons for doing that. So, as is described, Lord Chaitanya later on made him the Acharya of the chanting. He's speaking about Haridas Thakur. Then the second paragraph, Prabhupada says, Lord Chaitanya's principle is universal. Anyone who knows the science of Krishna and is engaged in the service of the Lord is accepted as being in a higher position than a person born in the family of a Brahmana. So this is an interesting point. This Hare Krishna movement is for everyone. It is not sectarian, because it is dealing with the soul, with Atma, Tattva. It is not a sectarian religion. Right? It is not that Lord Chaitanya's teaching is anyone can take to this practice. It doesn't matter what your background is. It doesn't matter even if you've been practicing a different religion previously. Because Prabhupada explains that you cannot rubber stamp yourself a particular religion. Prabhupada said you can't just put on your forehead like Hindu or Muslim or Buddhist or Christian or Jew. You can't just like stamp, because that's external. And you can change the stamp. You can stamp on your head Christian and then wash it off, and then 6 months later stamp Hindu and then wash that off. It doesn't mean anything. It's all external. The teachings that Lord Chaitanya is giving, what the Hare Krishna movement is teaching, is Atma Tattva. Atma Tattva means the science of the soul. We're not interested on the externals, but it's your soul and your soul's relationship with God, with Krishna. That is our focus in the Hare Krishna movement. So that is what is being emphasized. So that means that anyone can join. We don't say, oh, you're from Denmark, you can't join. Or we don't say you're from England, you can't join. We can't say, you're Australian, you can't join. Because that's sectarian. Lord Chaitanya's movement is above all sectarian considerations. So even though they were considered Muslim, if someone back then, and it's actually in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, if someone was considered a Hindu, because we are considered part of Hinduism, even though we're above Hinduism, but in Chaitanya Charitamrita, there are pastimes where devotees who apparently were Hindu were sprinkled with water from the pot of a Muslim, and then was said they would no longer be a devotee or a Hindu. Then they came to devotees in distress, and they said, what do we do? And, well, they didn't come to devotees, they came to Hindus. But some of the Hindu priests said, you have to drink boiling hot ghee, right, to purify yourself of being touched and losing your Hindu caste, which means basically committing suicide. But they said, because it's ghee from the cow, in your next life, you will be born as a Hindu again. So that was the atmosphere or the circumstances that this is set in at that time. So what Lord Chaitanya did, because they'd been converted to Islam to become Mohammedans, but Lord Chaitanya initiated them. He said, no, that's all external. Because normally Hindu people would say, now they were Hindus, now they've become Muslims, they can't come back to being Hindus. But Lord Chaitanya said, no. He said, no, you can become your devotees of Krishna. It is above all, and he initiated them. And they became the greatest devotees. And Prabhupada gives the example of Haridas Thakur, who was also born in a Muslim family, but was considered the greatest of all the devotees. So much so, Lord Chaitanya called him Namacharya, right? The teacher of the Sankirtan Yajna, the holy name of Krishna. So that's the context. Our movement is not sectarian. And if there's sectarianism within our movement, that's not our movement. Because sometimes it even pops up in our movement. This devotee won't speak to that devotee because, that's not actually what we're teaching and what we're practicing. So Lord Chaitanya, this is the context. Prabhupada's giving the context of Lord Chaitanya's actual mission. So, the principle of Lord Chaitanya's movement in educating and elevating everyone to the exalted post of a Goswami is taught in the Nectar of Devotion. So in the last book that we studied, Nectar of Instruction, it said, if you control the 6 urges, you can become a Goswami. Goswami means one who controls the senses. And then now, Prabhupada's saying here, this book will educate you fully how to do that. It will give you all the information of how to become a Goswami. So this book is it is our guidebook on how to become perfect devotee, pure devotee. Hands up, you want to become a pure devotee. Okay. Then you better pass your exam. Yeah. Yeah. Study this book carefully. So then, on the next page, presume everyone's book's the same as mine. I'll just flip the page. Is that happening for you? That's why I'm checking.
This is the same.
Same, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just you jump around, so it's hard to follow you.
Well, I'm telling you where I'm going. I'm going to the second page of the preface, which says X11.
Are you starting at the very top?
Well, I'll tell you where I'm starting. I'll tell you which paragraph I'm in when I start reading. So the second paragraph down, it says, the Lord particularly instructed Rupa Goswami on the science of Krishna consciousness. These teachings of Lord Chaitanya to Rupa Goswami are narrated in our book, Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. So as we said, he received a lot of association with Lord Chaitanya in Puri. Yeah, but in Prayag, yeah, which is where he met Lord Chaitanya. They were crossing. Lord Chaitanya was traveling one direction. He was traveling the opposite. And they met in Prayag, which is Allahabad. When they met there, he instructed him on the banks of the Dashwamedha Ghat for 10 days. 10 days of straight teaching. So you can imagine the potency, the power of being instructed by God himself, Lord Chaitanya himself, for 10 days on the bank of the Ganges. The power of that. Now, in our class in Melbourne, which we taught the last couple of nights, Lord Chaitanya is just being instructed by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, which goes for 7 days. So it's very powerful that, you would sit for 7 days with a perfected teacher and you would receive instructions from them, right? It's an extremely powerful experience. So imagine God himself, the best of all teachers, Krishna himself, teaching you for 10 days on the bank of the Ganges. So that's how Lord Chaitanya was taught. How Rupa Goswami was taught by Lord Chaitanya.
The rest of us only got 8 verses.
What was that?
The rest of us only got 8 verses.
Yeah.
Direct.
Direct, yeah. Direct writing. And that's an interesting point that Lord Chaitanya only penned, is attributed to 8 verses. Although there's a few other ashtakas as well. Jagannath Ashtaka, the one we sing when we go to, that's said to come from his lips. So maybe someone else wrote it.
Swami.
Yeah. Those 8 verses that we sing in Puri. He recited that. But actually writing down says Shikshastika was the only thing that he wrote. But what he did with his with his teachings, he taught his disciples. It's actually the same as Jesus. Jesus did not write. He instructed the apostles, and then the apostles wrote. The book of Mark, the book of John, the book of Peter, Paul. Like that. So in this case, it's the same. Lord Chaitanya spoke to Rupa, to Sanatana, and then they wrote their books. So this book is based upon what was directly spoken by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Prayag, Allahabad. Third paragraph. Later, Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada elaborated the teachings of the Lord with profound knowledge of revealed scriptures and authoritative references. From various Vedic literatures. Srila Srinivasacharya has described in his prayers to the 6 Goswamis that they were all highly learned scholars, not only in Sanskrit, but also a foreign language such as Persian and Arabic. So that is why the Nawab wanted them to run his government, because they knew multiple languages. They could speak to the Persians, they could speak to the Muslims, to the Indians. They knew Sanskrit. So extremely learned personalities, extremely qualified personalities. And when they wrote these books, they're Uttama Adhikaris or Mahabhagavats. In other words, they've written their books, but they've given reference to the Bhagavatam and to all the most important Vedic literatures, which is what you need to do. You know, if you're going to speak our philosophy, you have to reference. So a very advanced soul, an Uttama Adhikari, he can reference, he can say, this is from here, or this is, I can substantiate it. So that's what they did when they wrote, they heard from Lord Chaitanya, and then they substantiated it all by bringing all the different references. And especially Jiva Goswami in his Sandarbhas, he's brought down all of the references from the Bhagavatam and from the Vedic literatures to substantiate Lord Chaitanya's entire philosophy so that we can understand it. So they were great scholars. So this book also is extremely scholarly. There's a great deal of research in this book. At the end of the third paragraph, Prabhupada says, it is only for our guidance that Srila Rupa Goswami prepared his book, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, which is now presented in the form of the Nectar of Devotion. Persons engaged in the Krishna consciousness movement may take advantage of this great literature and be solidly situated in Krishna consciousness. So as we've mentioned in previous classes, you know, quite often we counsel devotees, and devotees come and they say, oh, we're having this problem or that problem. And quite often the first thing we say to the devotees is, are you reading Prabhupada's books? Because if you're reading Prabhupada's books, you won't have so many problems in spiritual life. Right? If you're absorbing yourself in an authorized philosophy, you'll become fixed in your spiritual life and you won't have so many problems. And we see time and time again, quite often people are having problems because they're not reading Prabhupada's books. That's why Prabhupada emphasized that so much. And he said we should have courses like this course we're doing now, is for that reason. Because if you're fixed in the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, your mind is not going to distract you so much. But if you're not fixed in the philosophy, your mind will give you a lot of problems. And we see, because we have to counsel devotees, and quite often they're having problems with their mind because they're just not reading the books properly. When you read the books, you get out of the mind. You at least get onto the platform of intelligence. And from that, you go higher to the soul. So that's why we have to study books. At the bottom of the page, it says, now Prabhupada he's given some context or some history of Rupa Goswami, the personalities behind the book. Now, Srila Prabhupada is going to break down the actual title of the book, Bhakti Ras Amrita Sindhu. So what is the literal meaning of the book, the Sanskrit? Yep. Bhakti means devotional service. Every service has some attractive feature that drives the servitor progressively on and on. So devotional service, Prabhupada actually has said, and different Sanskrit scholars say, it's hard to find English comparatives to these Sanskrit words. When you translate something, sometimes it's difficult to actually find the equivalent translation of the word. So bhakti, Prabhupada has chosen the English words, devotional service. Devotion, bhakti means devotion. All of us are operating on devotion. Right? We're all devoted to something or someone. Right? Everyone's devoted. Someone's serving someone or something. People serve their dogs. Prabhupada would say this. They serve dog, but they will not serve God. They'll serve DOG, but not GOD. So everyone has to serve. Bhakti means devotion. And how is devotion demonstrated? Through service. You can't just say to someone, oh, I love you, I'll do anything for you. After some time, the person goes, oh, well, can you put the rubbish out? Can you actually do something? You keep saying that you have this sentiment. What is the proof of the sentiment? So that is devotional service. So Prabhupada has given the definition of bhakti as devotional service. The bhakti ras amrita sindhu. So bhakti means to do service on a practical level. Prabhupada says, Prabhupada's words are like sutras. Sutras means each line practically, you can take it like it's got very deep meaning within it. It's pregnant with meaning. So Prabhupada says every service has some attractive feature which drives the servitor progressively on and on. So why do we do service? You do service because you get pleasure. Why do you do anything in life? Because you get pleasure. If there's no pleasure, why would you do it? Right? Why do you do your activities? Right? If there's no pleasure, then what's the use of doing it? You don't feel inspired. There has to be pleasure. So Prabhupada said there has to be an attractive principle. And what's the attractive principle for the devotees? It is Krishna. Right? Guru and Krishna. Guru, Krishna, Vaishnava, Bhagavad Gita. Right? We serve these principles. To serve Krishna or Guru means that we get pleasure from the service. That's what drives us on and on and on. And the definition in Chaitanya Charitamrita of Shraddha or faith is unflinching trust in something sublime. In other words, it's something that you can't physically comprehend with our empiric senses. You can't see God. None of us have seen God. But most of us believe he exists. And why do we believe he exists? Because we serve him and we get reciprocation within our heart, within our consciousness. So therefore, we feel inspired to continue serving. So that is the attractive principle in service. So bhakti is based on that. It's unflinching trust in something sublime. Right? We're serving someone that we've never even met, that we've never seen, but we're convinced he's there, and we will fully dedicate ourselves to it. That's what bhakti means. So it's called devotional service. A little bit further down, Prabhupada says, that force which drives the philanthropist, the householder, and the nationalist is called rasa, or a kind of mellow relationship whose taste is very sweet, very sweet. So bhakti ras has different meanings. It means quality, and it's translated as mellow, or as Prabhupada says, sweetness, or sometimes rasa is translated as juice. Just like if you get a juicy mango or a juicy, what's a fruit that you like? Orange. Pineapple. Okay, pineapple. Get one that everyone can agree. Okay, so you get a pineapple. If there's no juice in it, there's no pleasure. Right? If it's all dried up and there's no pleasure. Pleasure comes from juice. It comes from rasa. So the pleasure in any relationship comes from the rasa that we experience in the relationship. And that's what this book is about, Bhakti Ras. Bhakti Ras means you serve God, serve Krishna with devotion, and you receive a pleasure or a juice or a mellow from that exchange. And rasa, the word also means in terms of relationship. Right? So ultimately means the perfect relationships we can have with Krishna in 5 types of rasas and 7 secondary rasas. What are the 5 primary rasas? That's one. Yeah, so we've got the 5 primary rasas. Then what are the 7 secondary rasas? 7 secondary. They are in the next section of the Bhakti Rasa in the southern side of the ocean. They are described in detail. That's where rasa comes from. Like Hashiras, like the pleasure of laughter or the pleasure of humor. Right? You can have Madhurya Ras, as Mani Guru Prabhu was mentioning. Madhurya Ras means conjugal relationship with God. But the secondary ras, there's 7 secondary rasas which come and go in that relationship. One of them is humor. You feel like, there's jokes which are made. And this drives the pleasure. This increases the pleasure. So we have the sthayi bhav, the permanent relationship, and then we have the fluctuating mellows. So rasa means that taste or that pleasure which you get from those different experiences in relationships. So this is called Bhakti Ras. That's what Prabhupada is describing so far. If we go down further, about halfway down, Prabhupada says, this position of changing back and forth is technically called Bhoga Tyag, which means a position of alternating sense enjoyment and renunciation. So, in other words, Prabhupada's pointing out, everyone in this material world is looking for that pleasure which originally we had with God. Right? Every soul originally had a pleasurable relationship with God, with Krishna. But now what has happened? We have come to this material world, we are Nichabada, and we're trying to find that same pleasure in relationships with material personalities. And as Prabhupada points out, it fluctuates here between Bhoga and Tyag, enjoyment and then renunciation. If you ever had that experience in life, someone that you really enjoy being with, you love deeply, and they mean everything to you. And the next day, they're the opposite. And you just feel like, I never want to see this person again. And I never want to experience it. So it's Bhoga Tyag, enjoyment, renunciation. Same object, 2 sides of the same coin. That's material world. It will always be like that. Right? It will give you pleasure, but then it will give you renunciation. You can't find a perfect relationship in this material world, as hard as you try. But you'll never find it. Because it only exists with Krishna. So this is called Bhakti Ras. The rasa we're looking for is not with anyone in this world. It is only with Krishna. So, Prabhupada says at the bottom of the page, at death, everything is finished, and one has to begin a new chapter in life in a new situation, perhaps higher or lower than the last one. In any field of activity, political, social, national, or international, the result of our actions will be finished with the end of life. That is sure. So what this philosophy, what this book is teaching us is don't put all of your energy into cultivating relationships in this world, which are temporary and which will end ultimately and will not give you complete satisfaction. But rather try to develop a relationship with the supreme absolute truth who can give you complete satisfaction of bliss. So then the next page, which is X1b. Bhakti Ras, however, the mellow, relished in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, does not finish with the end of life. It continues perpetually and is therefore called Amrita, that which does not die but exists eternally. So Bhakti Ras, Amrita. This word Mrita means death. Everyone dies in this world. That's why in English we have this saying, as sure as death. Only 2 things are definite when you're born. You will die and you'll get taxed. Especially in England.
That's about it.
Tell me about it. You will die and you'll get taxed. That is guaranteed. in this world. You cannot avoid it. But, as it is saying here, this book is called Bhakti Ras Amrita. Amrita means deathless. Amrita, usually the word that we usually use for to translate Amrita is nectar. That's why it's called the nectar of devotion. Nectar, because the devatas, the higher beings within the universe, they have beverages which increase your life when you drink them. And that is called Amrita. So that's why the devatas are so virile and so strong. They drink these drinks, soma ras, right, which is made from the grass which grows on the moon. You have to excuse us, some of the things we say. It's not far out. You'll hear things here which are quite far out. If you stick around, it makes sense. So they drink the soma rasa, and it produces amrita, and it increases your vitality. There's drinks like that on this world as well. You know,
Wheatgrass.
yeah, wheatgrass, you know, different natural beverages. They increase your vitality, your life, your energy. So this amrita means nectar. So nectar means the nectar of devotion, bhakti ras, right? That devotional mallow that we're searching with Krishna, that will last forever. So that's what we're aspiring for. We're trying to reach the bhakti ras, amrita, the nectar of devotion. So then, if we go down the page, the next paragraph further down, Prabhupada says, this eternal engagement in bhakti ras can be understood by a serious student upon studying the nectar of devotion. Adoption of bhakti ras or Krishna consciousness will immediately bring one to the auspicious life free from anxieties and will bless one with transcendental existence, thus minimizing the value of liberation. So there's one lecture where Prabhupada actually says for a devotee, someone who's devoted their life to Krishna, there is no death, right? They've reached the platform of Amrita. Amrita means without death. Prabhupada says there is no death for a devotee. Why?
Because we carry on.
Yeah.
We become people that carry on the service.
Yeah, because the soul cannot die. Yeah. So the service will continue. You'll look after cows now, and then you'll look after cows again, because the service continues. So that is the nature of the soul. The nature of the soul is that it will continue to serve. So therefore it is called Amrita. Amrita means without end. Service does not finish. This is pointed out actually in the Harinam Chintamani by Srila Haridas Thakur. He explains to us that the sadhana, which we practice now, all the items of service, which we'll learn about in this book, to serve Krishna, they will be exactly the same service as we'll do in the spiritual world. Right? The sadhana and the sajja, the means and the goal are the same. If you make garlands here, you'll make garlands for Krishna in the spiritual world. If you cook for Krishna here, you'll cook for Krishna in the spiritual world. If you collect the water for the offering to Krishna in this world, you will also collect in the spiritual. All the services are the same. It actually describes in the perfected living entities, the Nityasiddhas, what their services are. Narottam Das Thakur, his service is to boil the milk to make the milk sweets for Krishna. So that's his service. He boils the milk, and he's got to make sure it doesn't boil over it. Keeps an eye on the milk. That's his main service in the spiritual. Also says with the chamra. Does with the chamra in his perfected body. So everyone has their particular services. So whatever the services you do here are the same. Prabhupada says the pujaris of the deity of Krishna and Balaram, any deities in ISKCON, when you worship the deity, Prabhupada says they are the most fortunate souls in the material world because all the services that you render, you will do the same services in the spiritual. And Jananivas Prabhu told me, he's been serving Radha Madhava for 50 years in Mayapur. He told me that normally when a devotee passes away, he goes to the universe where Krishna is performing his pastimes and gets trained and then enters into the eternal pastimes of Krishna. But he actually told me that for the pujaris, they go direct because they've already done the seva. It means like, if you're doing it like Jananivas Prabhu was doing, Pankajangri Prabhu was doing. If you do it like on that level, then you'll go straight to the spiritual. Hare Krishna. Not like down here. There's admin. Like, Rupa Manjaro or Rupa Goswami says, you do this, you do that, you do that. There's admin, but not like down here. Yeah, down here, it doesn't always end in bliss. Up there, it always ends in bliss. Yeah. We know. Yes, we know. Okay. On the top of page 15, XV, Prabhupada says, the senses can then become uncontaminated, being constantly in touch with Bhakti Ras. So in the next few days, maybe Maggie, if you can remind me, next few days I'll send out the KMVs, the key memory verses for this. One of them is Sarvapati Vinimuktam Taparatwin Nimalam Rishikena Rishikesha Semana Bhakti Uchite. This verse describes that you have to use your senses in the service of the master of the senses. Because if you use your senses in this world for sense gratification, it causes bondage in this world, which is what everyone in this world is doing. They're using their senses just for their own selfish enjoyment. And if you do that, they cause you to be bound perpetually in this world. So the senses are not meant to be used for sense gratification. They're meant to be used for the pleasure of Krishna and Krishna's service. When you do that, you become liberated. You become purified. You become a pure devotee. But if you use your senses for sense gratification, you will suffer in this material world. Many books about that. How people tried to use their senses in sense gratification and they suffered in this material world. Yeah. But in the spiritual world, the senses are used in the service of Rishikesh, the master of the senses. And when one does that, he feels completely blissful and satisfied. So that is what will be taught in this book, how to use your senses in the service of the master of the senses. Yeah, I'll give you the verses. It's 4 verses you have to memorize. Okay. The exam, which will be a few months away, will be on the first 150 pages, which means the first 19 chapters of the book. It doesn't matter because I will give you an overview class, which will more or less inform you what you need to cover for the actual exam. But there's a lot in this. There's 19 chapters. So in these 19 chapters, it's very important we study these 19 chapters carefully because the whole process of bhakti, of sadhana bhakti, is explained. They're very important to study it carefully. I've studied this book a number of times. I've taught it a number of times. So it's very important. And I'm actually feeling blissful to be teaching it. I haven't taught this for a long time. But each time you teach, it becomes fresh. It's like fresh realizations are attained. So, at the bottom of the second paragraph, Prabhupada says, that missing point is Krishna. Or I'll go back one line. At the present moment, the human society teaches one to love his country or family or his personal self but there is no information where to repose the loving propensity so that everyone can become happy. So we see that's happening right now in the world, right? Love your country. How's that doing for you? Oh, any of us, but yeah, your country is famous around the world. You know, loving it, we see people love their country, but what does it actually do for them? Bring soul to a higher platform of bliss, right? Or it says here, love your family. That has limitations also. That can only give so much pleasure. It can't give unlimited pleasure. Or it says, or love the personal self, love yourself. That's a big thing now. But love yourself. Like, there's one of the most famous movie stars, rock stars in the world right now has just made a whole mini kind of documentary movie about her life. And her conclusion is more or less you have to love yourself. That's not the conclusion either. J, low. If you want to know what I'm talking about. How did I find it? Because Jay Shetty's in. So that's how I found out about it. So that's her conclusion. The conclusion is you've just got to love yourself. But that's not the conclusion of life. That doesn't give you complete happiness or perfect happiness. Just loving yourself, right? It can actually lead to directly the opposite thing. Okay? Can lead to complete misery. Can. But it's not the goal of life. You know, to have healthy self-esteem, that's a good thing, but it's not the goal of life. The goal of life is to love Krishna. That's what the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is teaching us. So your family, your country, and yourself will not save you at the time of death. At the very bottom of page 15, Prabhupada says, this theme is the sum and substance of the nectar of devotion, which teaches us how to love Krishna in 5 different transcendental mellows. So the title of the book is Bhakti. What does Bhakti mean? Ras. Rasa means? Yep, very good. Amrita. Yep, nectar. Sindhu. The word Sindhu means ocean. Just ocean. Ocean. An ocean. So how much pleasure is there in serving God, in serving Krishna? It's like being in an ocean of bliss. That's why the Hare Krishna people always look happy. Because they're in an ocean of bliss. Or else we give your money back. Give unlimited bliss. Prabhupada was turning hippies into happies. Unlimited bliss. It's an ocean of bliss. Right? To understand the ocean, you just need to fly over it or get a boat over it. Then you understand its magnitude. You know, when you look out the window and you can't see anything but ocean, you understand its magnitude. That's how much bliss there is in devotional service to Krishna. Right? It is unlimited. This will be spoken about as the book continues. Then Prabhupada says at the very bottom, going into the next page, our loving propensity expands just as a vibration of light or air expands. But we do not know where it ends. The nectar of devotion teaches us the science of loving every one of the living entities perfectly by the easy method of loving Krishna. So Prabhupada explains that this book will teach us, he's mentioned 2 points here at the end of the last paragraph and the beginning of this paragraph. You will learn to love every living entity because you will see every living entity is connected to Krishna. Pandit Samadarshana, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita. You have to give equal love and respect to all the living entities. If you see in duality, I love kangaroos, but I don't love snakes. Some people think like that. Right? I love whales, but I eat chickens. This is all duality. So if you're seeing one and the other, this is not spiritual vision. So the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu teaches us how to see all living entities spiritually. Yeah, platform of correct. And as Prabhupada explains, it leads us to one of our primary relationships with Krishna. That's the whole purpose of this book, this philosophy. That's what the later 3 sections are about. What is our eternal relationship with Krishna? Our Stahi Bhav. Stahi Bhav means your permanent ecstasy, your permanent relationship, conjugal love, parental love, or friendship with God, with Krishna. That's what the book is leading to. That's why we're studying this science, to get to that point, that realization. About a third of the way down, Prabhupada says, if we learn how to love Krishna, then it is very easy to immediately and simultaneously love every living being. So if you focus on devotional service, you'll love all the living entities. Prabhupada says at the bottom of the paragraph, the first paragraph, is very famous line, Prabhupada. Prabhupada says, the nectar of devotion will teach us how to turn the one switch that will immediately brighten everything, everywhere. One who does not know this method is missing the point of life. One switch. So you have to find the switch. If you walk into a dark room, you've got to find the switch. Then everything's illuminated. So it is taught that if you serve Krishna, love Krishna, automatically you will feel harmony with all living entities. That's why in the world now there's not harmony. Countries are not getting along, people are not getting along, because when you focus on Krishna, then automatically you see everyone with equal vision. But that's not happening at this point. So then, at the top of the next paragraph, Prabhupada says, as far as material necessities are concerned, the human civilization at the present moment is very much advanced in living comfortably, but still they are not happy because we are missing the point. This is actually the best point in history, in modern history. Last few thousand years, there's actually less wars on the planet right now than any other point in the last couple of thousand years. Right? It's the best time to be alive on this planet. Everything is easy. Right? If you want light, you just flick a switch. Right? In the past, you would have had to go out, collect wood, or grind oils, or so much endeavor just to create a little bit of light. But now life is easy. So it is meant that in this easy time, we're meant to take advantage and become spiritually enlightened, because everything else is taken care of us. But most people get carried away with the easiness and they just try to enjoy it all. Right? And then that leads to so many problems in life. So then, on the final page of the preface, Prabhupada says, one may live without material discomfiture, but at the same time, he should learn the art of loving Krishna. So Prabhupada says, we can live with all of this facility we have, but focus on serving Krishna. That's the goal. Real self-realization and realization of Krishna go together simultaneously. That is called the science of self-realization. Prabhupada explains in the science of self-realization. Self-realization and God realization go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. When you realize God, you'll realize yourself. When you realize yourself, you realize God. And then Prabhupada says at the very end, the nectar of devotion is specifically presented for persons who are now engaged in the Krishna consciousness movement. So this book is especially for devotees, so we should study this book carefully. Any questions, any comments, anything we have discussed? Thank you all for coming. Next week, we will cover the introduction. And then the week after, we will begin the first chapter of the Nectar of Devotion. So I'd like to thank you all for attending. And welcome Manjuali, one of our new members of our group. Thank you for coming.
Thank
And
you. Keshava.
you're a nice lady.
Thank you,
So
Prabhu.
you're a nice lady as well.
I'm not.
Oh, sorry, wrong one. Okay, so we'll see you next week. Hare Krishna.
Very good.
Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Hari Bol.
Very good.
Hare Krishna, thank you, Keshava.